guys, so today on Behind the Screen we are going to be talking about pre-made encounters. So this would be things that you can find online or modules or books or basically any kind of pre-made encounter, one-shot, campaign, all of those, and how to modify them to make them fit into a homebrew campaign. So this is something that has been on my mind recently because I, as some of you may know, am running a pretty intensive homebrew campaign, my Sarah Adele campaign, that we've now been playing for 10 months. And I started this campaign not really knowing what I was doing because I'm new to this, and have been kind of winging it as I go along. So I've probably done a lot of things wrong when it comes to world building, etc., etc. But that is not what we're here today to talk about. Today we are going to talk about incorporating pre-made encounters into your homebrew setting. So why would you want to do this? Well, one, if you are short on time and desperately need something for your players to do, or if you need a little inspiration and you want to draw from something that's been pre-made. Now, originally when I started my campaign, I was not interested in ever using anything that was pre-made because I really wanted to make sure that it was unique and different and something of my own creation. And that was basically when I realized that borrowing and modifying, that's kind of something that everybody does because you're inspired by other things and you pull in this inspiration and that inspiration. It just makes for a good recipe for a good homebrew campaign. So while I write all of the stories myself and I come up with everything, most recently I was presented with the fact that my players needed to get a little bit further leveling wise than they are currently in order to take on the next part of the story in my campaign. So I was like, all right, I need a filler, something that is going to sort of bridge that gap that will still feel like it's part of the campaign. What am I gonna do? And I finally was like, you know what, I have an opportunity. So for those of you who follow this channel, you know that on Tuesdays we do, on Mondays, sorry, we do unboxings, and we have a subscription to RPG Crate. If you have not heard of RPG Crate, basically it is a monthly subscription where you receive RPG resources, miniatures usually, a 3-part encounter, usually some sort of book, and occasionally other player material or DM materials. It is really geared towards the DM and not so much towards the player. It's pretty amazing, some of the resources that I got. I use some of the books very heavily when it comes to like research. There's one book that they sent, it's called The Lost Book of Spells, that is really going to get incorporated as we get a little further in my campaign. There's going to be some interesting magic that starts happening that is not the normal D&D 5e magic, and my players are going to love it. Stop watching this video if you were in my campaign. Spoilers. So anyway, so recently I was like, okay, they build every month a 3-part mini encounter faux campaign, so to speak, that are on one sheets. So I have an example here. This is one of them. They're on these laminated sheets. This is the first part of the encounter. And so I decided to take this and incorporate it into my own campaign. Now you can find things like this. I mean, RPG Crate does a great job with these now that I've actually used one of them for part of my campaign. RPG Crate is great, but you can find this sort of thing, these sort of one-shotty things on everywhere all over the internet. DM's Guild, RPG Now. These are great places where you can find these resources, or you can incorporate part of a module from something like Tales from the Yawning Portal. You can run one of those really pretty easily. It all depends on how you add it into your world. So I think the most important part of any time you try to incorporate a pre-made encounter is to know your players. Cater to them. This is about them having a good time and you having a good time playing with them. So if you pick up an encounter that you're like, yeah, this sounds cool, I don't know if they'll like it, probably not an encounter or mini campaign that you would want them to do because they won't enjoy it. So find an encounter or a dungeon that's going to really appeal to their player aesthetic, to their party aesthetic. And then what I realized is that this is a 3-part, I have all the parts here. This is a 3-part campaign. Don't look, guys, if you haven't, if my players are still watching, you better stop watching right now. This is a 3-part campaign. So really finding the parts that you think will be the most fun for your players is really, really important, and then focusing on those. So whether that's a particular monster that they're going to face, a particular type of loot that they've been looking for. I have a character in my campaign who we have homebrewed our own version of herbalism, and so she's always collecting herbs. She's a druid. And so the part of this encounter, they're in a lake, so there may be some herbs and some things that she gathers over the course of this little side quest that will play into her herbalism, or if perhaps there's a particular type of puzzle. So a lot of these pre-made campaigns or dungeons or encounters or whatever you want to call them, a lot of them have puzzles or other things that players have to figure out. If your players really like puzzles, you can definitely pull that part out. So pull out the parts that you think your players are really going to like and focus on those. Along with that, goes hand in hand, is making sure that you're simplifying. So with this, it doesn't look like that much. It's 3 sheets. That is not actually a lot in terms of content. However, it's still a very complex dungeon. It's complex, to say the least. Sometimes it's an okay thing to take parts out, to simplify. My players don't do a lot of dungeon crawls. They do a lot of role playing. So I know that I need to take out parts of this dungeon that are more crawly and less about the story. They really like the story. I know that they like the story, so I need to take away the parts that don't play into it in order to make it more meaningful to them. The pre-made pieces can sort of be really deep as well as really wide. There's a lot to pull from, so just taking the time to read through all the material and then make sure that it's really gonna, how you're laying it out is really gonna work for your players is really important. But not just your players. I mean, it's also super important to make sure that it's going to work for your campaign. So that brings me to my next point, is when you take something like this, you want to make sure that it's going to be able to be incorporated to your homebrew. This can't feel totally different than the things you've already presented to them. So thankfully, I've given my players a variety of different experiences. They've done caves, they've done underground, they've done ruined temple complexes. So a tower that's appeared in a lake somewhere because the lake has been drained is a fun mystery for them to solve. But I also wanted to make sure it was being incorporated into the campaign. So last request, if you are one of my players and you are watching this, you need to turn this off now, or you're going to be spoiled for some major things in our campaign arc. I mean it. Stop watching. Okay. Are you still watching? No? Yes? Stop watching. So, anyway, in my campaign, so far the primary story arc has been about a cult and a dragon that lived 1,000 years ago, and they've been on this very explicit storyline that is very predictable. They're gonna get to defeat the cult at some point and the dragon and all of this other stuff. So they're gonna get there. But I'm now, with this pre-made thing, starting to lay the groundwork for the second concurrent arc that's going to start up. So part of this is built into what I had planned in some of the players' backgrounds. So in their own personal storylines that I'm having happen at the same time, we're going to start seeing other things happening in the world that will start to enhance the story in different ways. So this particular event that will happen at the end of this encounter will drastically change the world depending on what they do. And whatever happens, there is an entity at the end of this dungeon, this encounter, who is going to start knowing about my players. So basically they're gonna get on the radar of someone they probably would rather not be on the radar of. And that will end up coming into play. Now, this is just a story hook that I'm putting in, but it is going to have real world, or it's going to have fantasy world repercussions, because I'm going to start building out what this storyline looks like because of the events that happen here. So being able to take something that literally this has nothing to do with my world and inserting it and weaving it into the fabric of the world that I've already created is really, I'm hoping, making it a cohesive experience for my players and for their characters as they continue in this world. It's been made clear to me that they want to progress beyond the dragon storyline, beyond this cult storyline, and keep going from there. So hopefully this will be the first of many puzzle pieces that start slotting into place as we move forward. So taking something that literally was from nothing, these 6 pages, because they are double-sided, but which is written as a simple dungeon, complex dungeon. I will give them credit. It's really well written and it's a complex dungeon. But taking something like that and then working it into the weave of my world, it takes time. It definitely was beneficial that this ended up taking over 2 sessions. I thought it would be done in 1, but we did it over 2. So things that happened in the first one, I can sort of fudge around a little bit as we continue onward. And I'm still answering some of those questions myself. As a DM, you don't always know all the answers to all the questions. So leaving it vague actually gives you more opportunity to adjust in the future versus telling them outright, no, this is this thing. But yeah, so those are my very few tips for modifying and incorporating a pre-made encounter into your homebrew. Simplify, play to your players, or write to your players, incorporate to your players, incorporate into your campaign so that it feels natural in your campaign, and then also cater to your players and have things in it that are going to be the parts, or make sure that the things that are in it are the parts of playing D&D or Pathfinder or whatever your RPG system is that your players are going to enjoy just as much as you as the DM enjoy. So those are my tips. Now, there are a lot more experienced people out there. A lot of you watch these videos. So if you have other ways that you can incorporate pre-made encounters, dungeons, campaigns, puzzles, what have you that other people have come up with, please add them in the comments below. I love the conversations that come up from the comments because it helps me become a better DM. It also helps the rest of you become better DMs and GMs. And this is such a fun thing. This is what I sit and think about all day, is Dungeons and Dragons. It's what I wish I could do all day, every day. But I have a real job. This is the fun on the side, and so I will definitely make sure to check back in with you guys after we finish this pre-built, my amalgamated version of this pre-built campaign this weekend. We're playing on Saturday, which is so exciting. I love playing, or I love helping people play. But I will let you know how all of my things go. And if you have tips before then that you want to send to me about better ways to do this, definitely send those my way in the comments below or on Twitter at Conditioned Nerd. I'm always available. I'm always chatting. And I think that's going to be it today, guys. So please don't forget to like, subscribe, share with your friends if you have other DM friends who might enjoy this, or if you have other friends who might have comments for this, definitely share with them. You can support us on Patreon so that we can have even more cool stuff. You can definitely check us out there. But regardless, I will see you guys on the next adventure. Until then, bye guys!